Okay, amazing. So the recording has started. Wonderful. Okay, so first, you are in the right place if you really care about your relationships and you want to experience deeper connection and intimacy over time, right? If you want to create a world where you feel like over time you are loved and you are good, and that more and more you're actually feeling that. And I invite you, if these things feel true for you, and if you know, like, yes, I want to experience more of that. Yes, I want to experience more of that. Like, if this feels true for you, pop a yes in the chat if as you're hearing me say these. You want to know that you are contributing in your relationships and in your world. Like, you want to have this felt sense, I'm contributing, what I do matters. But you also really are feeling more and more like, I know I want to do this, but I want to contribute. I want to show up for my relationships in a way where it also really feels good for me, right? Like, you want that really beautiful thing happening in relationships where they feel reciprocal, where you feel like you're giving and receiving, and that really feels present. You want to feel like you are standing up for what matters to you and seeing that that's a good thing, right? That there's a way that you can stand up for what you want and what you need that can be graceful, that can feel beautiful, that can feel connective, and you can appreciate that about yourself and appreciate that about the people in your life, right? Wanting all of you to be like, yeah, right, it's good and okay to say what we want and need, right? If you want that kind of relationship, pop a yes in the comments too. I'd love to know. I think this is a big one that a lot of people want, is to being able to stand up for what you want and say, this is okay, I want this, and you want things, and what if it's okay that we say what we want? And you're also in the right place if you really care about growing and evolving, right? You want that to be something that you can do, something that can be easy, and you don't want to settle when something feels off. I think this is such a biggie as well, is knowing that you have permission and a way to stay connected to, hey, when something feels off, I can pause, I can listen, I can slow down, and I can give this attention. And I can see that as really, really good, right? So if these are things you want, let me know in the comments, pop a yes in, and share this with me if this resonates. So, yay, amazing. So, what we're going to talk about today, one, we're going to talk about why you get into cycles of disappointment and discontent in relationships and how this is connected to this desire to be good, right? The title of this class is A New Era of the Good Woman, right? Reinventing what it means to be and do good. And this doesn't just apply for women, this applies for men, this applies for all humans. And so often, when you question whether or not you are good and what you want is good, right, we can enter these cycles of discontent. And so we want to talk a little bit about why you get stuck in that a bit more deeply. And we want to talk about how you can get out of these cycles, right? And the piece I'm gonna touch on today is what keeps you in those cycles that needs to be untangled and unwound so that you can create a shift to get unstuck. And then, of course, I want to leave you with an introduction to a really, really important thing that you need to do to find it easier to stand up for your desires, deepen connections, and love your relationships again. So I'm going to highlight it and share, and this is going to be an exciting introduction to what we're going to dive into this year that I'm so excited about. So make sure that you stay to the end, because I'm going to be sharing what we're really going to be having some beautiful conversations about. So yeah, so at the end, you're gonna have a better idea of these three pieces of why you get stuck, what keeps you from getting unstuck, and then this thing that can make such a pivotal difference in getting you out of those stuck places. So I'd love, before we get into that, to just even ask you a question. So I invite you to pop a yes in the chat if you've ever taken an action or had a desire and you felt like ashamed about it. You felt like maybe you should try to hide it and you should keep it to yourself, and you started to feel stuck, right? You were like, oh no, I can't want that. I can't do that. I can't think about that, right? And so you try not to. And then you only feel over time that stuckness within yourself just feels like it overflows into feeling like you not only have challenges within yourself, but then you have compounded challenges in your relationship. And you can end up just feeling really, really stuck. How many of you have ever been there? I know that I have, and this can be a really, really tough place to be, but also a very, very human and natural place to bump up against. That place where you're like, right, like for a second there, I thought about something I wanted. Thought about something I wanted to pursue that mattered to me, and then I thought about what would happen if I went there, and I can't go there. And then the relationship challenges come up, and it all feels compounded. Yeah. So if this is you, right, and if you've ever been there, you are not alone. This is very, very normal that in relationships, when desires come up, when things come up that feel scary, that feel unfamiliar, that feel unknown, that you worry that maybe you won't be good if you want these things, it's very normal to start to have that that sticking point. And you're probably familiar with this if you have ever had, for example, an intimate desire that has scared you. Maybe there's something that you realized you wanted in your sex life that you hadn't wanted before. And now you're thinking about it and you're like, oh no, right? Or you became passionate about something, maybe that had nothing to do with sex and intimacy, but there was something that was alive in you that mattered to you, but you also know that not everybody thinks that that's a great thing to be passionate about. So it's scary to really acknowledge that you want that thing or that you like that thing. Or maybe you've hit a certain stage of your life and you feel like you aren't where you should be, right? Maybe 20 years into a marriage and you're like, oh no, I'm not happy and we should be, right? Or you're in a stage where you think you should have kids already, or your career should be further along than it is, or that you've lost a sense of passion and now it's too late, right? You can't commit to another thing because it's too late, right? These are all things that happen as a part of being human, but they're tough moments, right? When you feel that stuckness, when you feel that disappointment and that discontent, you feel stuck. And so what I hope to like lovingly provoke in you today, to invite you into a deeper contemplation around, is how you can relate to yourself, your relationships, your relationship to your relationships, like how you see yourself and how you feel you are in your relationships, all of those things in a way where you can actually feel more excited about them, more grateful for them, like putting your time, love, and energy into it is more worth it. I want to help wake that up in you again. And some of the big things I want to inspire from this conversation is that you trust yourself more deeply, right? That you know how to reconnect with play, with delight, that you can become a master of repairing after difficult moments. I actually think this is one of the greatest life skills that you can learn, and greatest relationship skills, is how to recover quickly after tough moments with yourself and then with other people. Right. And I want you to be blown away by how much love is actually available. Give me a yes if you would love to know that more love is available than you've currently felt, right? Whether it be with the person in your relationship or just within yourself. If you know you're really hard on yourself, you would love to be blown away by how much love is available. If this feels true for you, let me know. All right. And I imagine, and something I want you to know so, so deeply and feel more and more in touch with, is that you are significant and you are contributing. And that a huge part of what you contribute is you feeling lit up and connected to your own innate goodness, and especially your own innate goodness when you listen to, when you honor what actually feels good and right for you. So, yay, of course, I'm seeing some yeses, amazing. So this brings me to the first thing we're going to talk about today, which is why you get stuck in cycles of disappointment and discontent. And this can seem a bit simple, but it can go very, very deep, and it's extremely powerful to explore in a really explicit way. And this thing that gets you stuck in these cycles of feeling disappointed and discontent is rigid definitions of what is good and bad. In my experience, pain stems from believing that something bad will happen if you break a value system that you've learned in order to follow something else, follow something that feels different, feels better for you, but is different from what you learned. And I think something that is an incredible area of exploration that most people just aren't as in touch with as they could be is that we don't have any idea how much the rules we live by, right, are living by, are impacting the quality of your life and the quality of your relationships. And there's something that I want you to hear that is just such a biggie. And it's that the depth of connection and intimacy that's available in your relationships is connected to your ability to believe that rules are meant to be explored and evolved and adapted, right? If there is a sense that rules cannot be, they have to be followed, we have to be loyal to them no matter what, we can't question them, what's going to happen is that is going to impact the connection, the intimacy, the love, and the truth that becomes available in your relationship. And I want to open you up to seeing that there is so much more available in exploring the rules that you learned about what is good and bad in a new way. And I really want to offer you the shift in perspective that following those pre-prescribed social value systems, family value systems alone, without exploring them, without going more deeply into them, accidentally really creates like a prison in our mind that doesn't just break your own heart, but it keeps disconnection more alive with those that you love. Now, this is a huge conversation and one that can go so, so deep. But I want to share some of these principles with you to start because they are so powerful to start to contemplate. And they can create beautiful shifts and beautiful ripples. But they often take a little bit of exploring to really feel confident and anchored in what this means for you. So today we're just dipping our toe in, but I want to start to give you a dip that is full of love and new possibilities. So I'd love to know, pop a yes in the comments if you are feeling some of this. If you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I can see where, oh, I've learned some rules. I've learned some things that I have to do and that I should do. And something feels off about it, but I'm not sure entirely what to do about it. I would love to know if this is hitting for you and you are feeling this. So one of the reasons, there's lots of reasons I'm super, super passionate about this. And one of them, of course, is because of my own personal journey. And I can say I'm wrapping up this year actually feeling pretty grounded, really feeling like I trust myself, like I'm standing up so much more easily for what feels right and good for me. My relationship with my partner is getting stronger and stronger. I'm like so proud of how we repair now. We're like getting so much better at having moments that feel messy and being able to come around and be like, ooh, okay, we got it. Like we can come back together. And really, really feeling one of the things I am most proud of having learned to do is learning how to dissolve my own feelings of guilt and shame so much faster than I used to, right? I used to like have these moments of feeling so bad, so awful, and feeling paralyzed, right? Like sitting in the car after a conversation, feeling like I couldn't move, or lying in bed after a difficult day where I felt ashamed of something and feeling like I didn't know how I was going to move forward. And now feeling like sometimes those just take a few minutes to shift through, right? And feeling more love, feeling more connection, having moments this Christmas where I'm just snuggled up with the fireplace, soaking in the jacuzzi, having these really sweet moments with my partner where we're having a latte, just connecting, talking about what we want in our life, and having it be something that's just joyful and easy. And the thing connected to that that I want to highlight that is connected to this piece I'm so proud of is feeling like I have a strong anchor to a sense of home that is like within myself, but also with other people that I know I really, really love. And I'm so grateful I'm in my life and we have reciprocal relationships. But I also am connected to this feeling that I have a freedom to adventure, right? And to explore things out of what I have known right before, like to explore my unknown. Right, like this is a piece that has gotten stronger and stronger for me, and all of these things are things that I am so excited to celebrate and know that are really true for me, because there were times in my life where this did not feel true at all. And I want to talk a little bit about this because this is where so much of this exploration and passion really, really came alive for me. Right. I'm someone actually who I think rules are good, right? Like I love knowing that I'm good and I'm a good person. And I imagine, right, like most people that follow me and that coach with me or in my world, like you want the same thing, right? And I actually think that innately for all of us humans, like you want to know that you are good. I think that's something that's innately human in our heart and soul, is that you have an innate goodness, right? Like give me a yes if that really feels true for you, right? And I know this is true for me, right? I care about being good. I want to be good, and I always have. But I've also hated ignoring when something feels off to me or something feels important to me. But this used to be a huge battle for me. I have had times where I've really wanted to just make sure and try to make sure everyone was happy, right? And like when I would think about something I wanted for myself, I would also try to think about what everyone else wanted and if everybody could be happy. And right, like I wanted those experiences of like always feeling and like I fully belonged and like everyone was on board, and I was good and everybody thought I was good. Like I really wanted that. And I even remember when I was going to college that I didn't know where I was going to go to school, and I was visiting different schools. And I was kind of a homebody, right? I liked following the rules. I liked being close to home, right? Like I was someone who really appreciated like the safety and security of having home bases and following rules and all of that stuff. But I found this college in Baltimore, Maryland. I lived in Massachusetts, and I went to visit it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I really like this school. I really feel like this is a school that I need to go to. It felt really right. But I was also so scared because it was like an 8-hour drive from my family and my home and my hometown. And it was really scary to honor that desire. And I feel like over the time in my life, I've had a number of those moments where I really love that home base feeling and like following the rules and knowing that I'm good and trying to make sure everybody's happy. And I've had a number of these really significant moments where I've been like, oh, There's a desire that feels scary and important here, and I need to follow it. It feels really, really important for me to listen to this. And right, like I'd love to know, have you ever had one of those moments, right? Or more than one of those moments? I feel like it's very normal in life to have these moments. And yeah, pop a yes in the comments if you can relate to this. And one of these moments in particular that happened for me about like, oh gosh, more than 5 years ago now was one of the most challenging moments of my adult life, but it actually became one of the most liberating in the end. And if some of you have been following me for a while, you might be familiar with this moment, but I want to share it for a little bit from a specific angle. So when I moved to California about 10 years ago, and when I moved to California, I had this strong desire to try these sensual dance classes that I learned about. Like a coach I was following was sharing that she had this opportunity to try a movement class that was connected to pole dancing, and she shared how much she loved it. And when I didn't live in California and just, this was like, I think I saw the video of this woman who had tried a class like a couple of years before I moved to California. But when I moved there, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to try this. Like, I'm here in California, let me try this. And it ended up opening me up to an area of exploration in my life that was pretty phenomenal. And just getting more connected. Ooh, and I'm sorry, there's someone outside playing music that's pretty loud. Ooh, it's stopping. I have headphones just in case I need them, but it seemed to stop. So, so it was really interesting because I moved to California. I started taking these classes. I loved them so much, and it opened up this area of exploration into desire in ways that I didn't know before. And it started to get me curious about other things. It kind of created this ripple of curiosity in my life and in new conversations in my relationships and new conversations with other women. And it was so, so liberating. And so much so that I decided I needed to write a book about it. I was so, so passionate. I was like, I want everybody who wants to know about this, who wants a window into this, to have the opportunity. And so I decided to write a book about this journey. Fun little side note, if you are into human design at all, my profile for that is a 3-5, which basically what they are, one of the names for it is the Great Life Experimenter. So people who often have this design, like they live their life by trial and error, and they love to teach and share about it afterwards. And I am 100% one of those people. When I try something and I learn a lesson afterwards, I'm like, I've got to tell people. I've got to share this. And so I had this experience when after all of these ahas were coming together and I was having epiphanies around relationship and desire and sex. And so I wrote a book, I published it, and something happened that was very scary for me and set me back, and little by little became really, really terrifying. And it was that not everybody thought it was a good idea that I did it, right? Not everybody appreciated that I was sharing in this way. Not everybody thought it was good that I was sharing in this way. And so this book that in one hand was meant to be like a declaration of independence, right? It felt so amazing to share and be raw and share a vulnerable piece of my journey and how someone else could apply it for their life if they wanted to. It also showed me where I felt this fear around being bad and being perceived as bad, and what that provoked within me, what that initiated within me. And what was interesting was at that time, little by little, I stopped writing. For a while, I stopped celebrating. I didn't share as much. And I quietly did less and less of the things that felt like sensual for me and connected for me. And little by little, I started to feel so stuck. because I didn't want to upset anybody. I didn't want anybody to get hurt. And so I kind of like slowed everything down, right? Have you ever been there? I'd love to know if you've ever had one of these moments, right? Where like you do something and it feels exciting and then you realize, oh my gosh, someone doesn't like this or might not like this. And you feel that major contraction. That was one of those moments for me. And when I realized after a while that I was stuck, that I was not moving, and that I needed something outside of me, I made this decision to start investing in myself and seeing like what knowledge other people had that I didn't have that was keeping me stuck. Right? I knew that I needed support. I knew that I needed deeper understanding. And so I started to do a lot of internal work and a lot of internal work with other coaches and other teachers to understand what was happening in me that I knew that I was worried about being bad and being perceived as bad, but what was happening in me that to such a degree, I like it was stopping me from moving forward. And it was stopping me from moving forward with things I really, really cared about. And so along that journey of being coached and learning different modalities and starting to get free little by little and become aware of what I was thinking and what I was doing, something also happened where I had this turning point of I started to get really, really good, and I highly recommend this, at noticing what you're thinking, like you are observing your thoughts, ooh, what am I thinking about myself? What am I thinking about my life? And I started to get better and better at that. And I was having this kind of like difficult conversation with my partner, which at the time, especially like when this initially happened about five or maybe even 6 years ago now, um, there were a lot of difficult conversations and conversations we would have that afterwards just felt bad. It was like I didn't even know. It was like before we knew it, we were off in a place that felt really bad. And it was like sometimes I was like, how did we even get there? And right, ever have one of those moments? And so I was having one of those, and I said something in my head that I was like, holy cannoli, right? Like, this is an important thing that you just said, and let's untangle this. So what I caught myself saying was that I'm not here for who I am and what feels right for me. I'm wanted around for my compliance. I'm wanted around for what I do that makes other people think I'm good, right? It was like something to that effect. And I caught myself in this pattern of thinking and relating around what was good and bad that locked me out of really, really feeling that fulfillment and really, really feeling like like that thought pattern, right? That, oh my gosh, I'm just wanted around for how I make other people know that I'm good and upholding that I'm good and that this looks good, right? Like, whoa, baby, right? But how many of us have ever been there, right? I'd love to know and if you've ever been there. I think this is part of what happens, right? Is it is inevitable that when you are growing up, that when you are in communities, when you are around people, and this can be connected to religious groups or social groups, right? Or just your country. And it's inevitable. And some of it, I'm going to share a little bit more, right? Some of this is good, right? Having an idea of, okay, this is a good thing to do, and this is a bad thing to do, and this is what I want to do to be a good person. Some of that is amazing and really vital and critical to having a society that functions well and cares for one another. But some of it, what it does is only keeps you from really living in a way that feels honoring, where it's not just based on like blindly being loyal to something, because that's how we do things around here, but you're actually feeling free to devote yourself to what you know feels honoring and right and good for you. And so I went on this journey really like little by little, like as the days passed and as the weeks passed, like I really wanted to uncover this because I wanted to reconnect with my own innate goodness, right? Knowing I am good, right? Like you are innately good. We are innately good. And how can that be a far greater anchor And how can I re-evaluate what it means to be good? And this is a huge reason that we are here today now having this conversation, because I've realized just how much of an impact what you currently define as good and bad, how that is impacting the quality of your life and the quality of your relationships and the connection that's available, right? Because the tighter you feel around what is good and bad and what you need to do and be in order to uphold that, right? The tighter that is, the more it feels like you have to be a certain way to be thought of as good and to be good, the less you're going to try, the less you're going to take chances, the less you're going to explore, the less love is going to be available in here and with other people in your life. It's inevitable. And so this is why we want to have this new conversation. And the reason that these cycles of good and bad, right, create such a stuckness is because of a way that we have learned as humans to relate to what we consider bad. So I want to talk a little bit, this is our second piece, right, about what keeps you from getting out of these cycles. What is the thing that keeps you in staying in this loop, right? Because if you're listening to me and you're like, I get it, you know, good is subjective, and I can think about what I want for me and I can do what feels good for me, but you're like, but I don't, right? Like, you're not alone. And one of the reasons is, a huge reason is how we learn to relate, how you learn to relate to dealing with what is bad. And this, right, one of the most phenomenal things that I learned, right, for example, when I published that book, right, when I published that book and I was talking about things like sex and new relationship conversations and things that weren't as much a part of normal everyday conversations or approved of conversations, the thing I started to question, right, is, am I bad? Right? Was I bad for publishing this book? Am I bad for caring about these things? Right? Am I bad for wanting to make this available for other people to explore too, if they want to, if they feel this call? And so this question of, am I bad, came to the forefront, right? And what emotion is connected to that, right? Well, there can be a couple, but I want to highlight one, right? We might feel guilty or ashamed, right? Shame that, oh, right, maybe this is bad. And the thing about shame is that shame is not just a feeling. What I learned that is life-changing to understand is that shame is not only a feeling, it is a way of relating, right? And it's not just a way of relating to other people, but it's a way of relating to yourself that reinforces something is bad so you don't do it, right? And it's something that's it's very like stealthy, and we live in a world where it kind of like can seep in this system of relating of even of what becomes self-inflicted. Seeing yourself as bad can be very painful, and it can be very a very powerful force to anchor into you, not exploring outside of what you know to be good and bad. And I'd love to know, pop a yes in the comments if this resonates. This is really, really incredible to contemplate and to consider, to see, right? I'm not telling you this because I'm asking you to believe me without applying this to yourself. But I invite you to really contemplate this and sit with this. And I want to share a little bit more, but this is something that is incredibly valuable to consider. right? That labeling as good and bad can be helpful, right? Knowing what is good and bad for you, even, right, is like vital, right? So using those words good and bad actually can be of tremendous service. Ooh, does this feel good and right for me, right? Amazing question to ask. Having laws and rules about what it means to be a good and a bad person and to having consequences at times, right, can be really, really great. I actually was at a dinner a couple weekends ago, and I was talking to this couple that were from other countries. And we were talking about some of the differences between the US and some of these other countries. And one of the men was saying, hey, one of the things that's really interesting is that here in the United States, when it comes to traffic lights, right, and the light turns red, people stop, right? Like we know here you stop at a red light. And if you don't stop at a red light, you could get pulled over, you could get a ticket, right? You could cause an accident. There's like an awareness here, and at least it's been my experience, that you follow the traffic lights. But he was sharing that in this country that he was from, that's not as much a thing, right? That actually driving on the streets feels a little bit more scary and less secure because the traffic lights aren't taken as seriously. And so he was actually sharing, like, I actually prefer driving here in the United States because I feel safer, I feel more secure, there's more enforcement, there's more of an understanding, hey, we follow traffic lights. Right. So in a sense, this understanding of good and bad is really, really valuable. But what happens because good and bad, right? The words good and bad themselves are so subjective. One, it can be easy to get pulled into a rigid view because you're like, oh no, right? There's that traffic light thing, and there's this thing that, like, it's good and bad. It's good if you do this, right? And people are saying it's bad if I do this. So I do want to be a good person, so I shouldn't do that, right? It creates this really, it can create a really tremendous internal struggle. And so what happens with a system of using shame, right, which is something that is just a part of our world, right? It's not even just a part of like the Western world, but it's a part of the world, right? Is what that system banks on is that you are labeling yourself as bad, right? Because shame works really well when it's internal, right? Like you can have someone saying to you, right, that they don't think what you're doing is good. And obviously that can impact you, but shame creates a really strong internal impact, right? Where if you know and believe something to be bad, you will hide it. You will try to avoid that thing, right? Or you will like try to exchange it for good. And this is where, when it's outside of just like avoiding committing a crime or doing something that is actually detrimental to another person, right? This is where it can create so much internal pain that can be shifted, right? Because what if you're just, for example, from a family of nurses, right, where that's the good profession, but you decide you want to be a musician? Or what if you learn that sex is for having babies, but you feel really drawn to exploring the pleasure in sex and touch, and that you learn to see that that's bad, right? Does that mean you don't get to explore pleasure? Right? If you learn that in some marriage looks like this, right? You have certain conversations in marriage, and marriage looks like you get married and then you have kids. But what if you don't want to have kids right away? Or you're not sure you want to have kids at all? But the good thing to do is to have kids, right? This is the kind of good and bad gray area that is so, so important to feel freedom around, permission around, to even borrow permission from other people, right? Which is why I love to be here with you having these conversations. Because if there's a little bit of borrowing of trust, borrowing of validation that's needed that this is okay, I want to be one of those people in your life, right? That you can be trusted to create your own definitions of what is good and what is bad. And this brings us to our third point for today. And I think we are actually going to be good around keeping this about an hour. This third piece I want to talk about, right? This really valuable thing that actually makes it possible and easy to stand up for your desires and relationship and what you actually want is creating devotional codes. Something that I believe is true for most people is that you do not, I really think that I strongly believe that as humans, you are innately good. And that the very, very great majority of humans, that you do not necessarily need a moral system to keep you from killing people or hurting people or doing bad, right? And especially if you're here with me and you're coming to me and you're my audience, right? You already want to be and do good. What happens is you need a way of relating, a code that sees that when you see something that doesn't feel good and right for you, that betraying the good you knew actually is of a higher service, right? There needs to be an approval for living beyond the good and bad and actually feeling the freedom and the permission to build your own internal guidance system, right? So that you can feel confident to trust yourself, to stand up for your desires and see that that ripple is a good thing. And I believe that the path out of fear and disconnection and the accidental control that happens lies in creating a self-led definition of devotional codes, right? That's actually informed by experiences from your past, right? But that's also inspired by the love and truth that is in your heart and soul. And this is a journey that I have been on and continue to be on. And it is a journey that I know if you want to go on it, you can too. And you can completely change your relationship to the things that you learned to feel ashamed of and guilty about. I'm just going to pause for a moment. So, one of the things I'll share here, I was just reading a comment here about what if you're in a relationship where your partner doesn't have the same desires that you have, doesn't appear to want the same things as you have conversations and they don't feel like they're going in the direction of alignment. This is the thing I will say. And I think, although I'm going to state it as a simple answer, in my experience in the evolution of my relationship, right? Some of this stuff does not change overnight. And this is a really important thing to understand. And an even more important reason that when you know you want change and you know you're influenced by wondering if you're bad for wanting what you want or struggle with feeling guilty or ashamed when you want something for yourself, one of the greatest things you can do is become a role model, be the initiator with a loving and very unconditionally open heart to the thing that you want to be a stand for in your relationship. Like to become not the person who is saying, I want this, I need this, why are you not doing this, right? Because unintentionally what that does is that is making the other person bad or wrong for where they are, right? And that does not create the connection that we want, right? What actually creates the connection is letting go of the perception that anybody in the connection is bad, and actually being willing to see the goodness in all of it while you're also a stand for what you want. Let me know if that makes sense. But this is really, really important, right? Like, say, for example, I think I've shared this example before, but I think it's a really powerful one. When I was in my relationship, really wanting deeper physical connection, deeper physical touch. And I was asking my partner for it so much, and it was feeling so frustrating. One of the things I started to play with, because I started to get to a point where I was making him wrong and making him bad and getting into discussions where it wasn't feeling good, I started to play with holding my own hand at night because I really wanted touch. I was like, oh, I so want touch. Right. So I started playing with holding my own hand at night and touching my own body and starting to play with that, right? I started getting to the place where I could give him warm touch and give him warm presence without coming to him like I needed him to do something for things to be okay, or like he needed to do something for things to be better. And this kind of an understanding that so often when you feel bad, right? When we feel bad internally as individuals, what happens is there's often this accidental projection onto the other person that they are doing something bad for not contributing to our good and our happiness. And so this understanding of what is good and bad and expanding it beyond what we rigidly learned is that you free yourself up to really be and do and honor you, but you also free the other person up, right? You create an opportunity for there actually to be true, open-hearted, genuine connection, and not just connection out of loyalty because you should, because you're married, because you're partners, because you have to do this, because, right? And this, I really appreciate that question, because these are things that are really, really important. And, I'm going to share this because there's a woman that she does a lot of work in relationship. And I recently watched some of her stuff. I think she goes by the name, I'm not sure if this is her original name, but Teal Swan. And something that she said is, as humans, this interesting thing that we do is we're aware that when we are injured, when we feel bad, but we're often not as aware of when we injure, right? When we relate to another person in a way that feels bad for them. And this is actually, even though I wasn't going to speak too much about this today, and I'm not, one of the things I want to name about this is often too a piece of what happens when we feel ashamed, right? When you learn to label yourself and think that you are bad, right? You can't help but believe that something is bad about something someone else is doing, right? Like, we can't see something as bad within ourselves and then somehow see it as good in another. It doesn't work that way. Like, we have to expand the capacity internally of what you believe is good and right. And as you feel that and know that within yourself, you can more easily give it to another. This has been phenomenal for me to understand. And it's a little bit hard at first because it does take some self-reflection and seeing that it's how powerful it is to work from the inside out, but it makes such an incredible difference. So I hope that was supportive and helpful to hear. And again, this isn't, what else do I want to, what I want you to hear with this is, it takes a little practice, right? And when it's frustrating, it's okay, right? Like, so often this journey of getting to relationships feeling amazing and repairing super fast, it does involve, I often talk about relationships involving being on two parallel tracks, right? Where you are, in order to really, really have amazing, super fulfilling, worth it relationships, you have to be on two tracks, right? You don't have to, but I recommend, and I've found in my own journey and working with other humans, it's so helpful to be on two tracks at the same time, where you are continually learning to love yourself, expand the definition of good and bad, like honor yourself more deeply, and then learning how to honor your partner and honor what you guys want together, and be on those two parallel tracks together at the same time, and choosing to go on those two tracks and not letting one go off to the side or the other, like saying, hey, these two get to walk side by side. And as I honor me and I honor us at the same time, that's how we get to have the greatest ripple of experiencing beauty. And what I'm going to name as, oh, yay, I'm glad that was helpful. What I'm going to name this as entering the age of devotion, right? Because at the end of the day, you will do what you believe is good and you will avoid what you believe is bad, right? Or you will try to avoid feeling bad or trying to hide the thing that you think is bad. But when you can actually find the courage and the strength to really choose and create self-led definitions of good, right? Gathering from your experiences, gathering from what you know has supported you and has supported life, maybe life in general, relationships in general, right? When you can take that and then untangle the lie that you're going to be punished for honoring yourself, or this lie that love or attention or nourishment will be denied to you if you upset someone, right? When you can untangle that and recognize the truth that love and attention and nourishment is always available, and your greatest access to it is in really self-defining what it means to be and do good, you get to have an entirely new experience in your life with yourself and in your relationships with other people. So I want to really just leave you with this, because one of the things, and I invite, as we're coming to a close with this, I'm going to be sharing a few closing thoughts. But one, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts that are coming up, feel free to post them here in the chat. You can also post them in the Facebook, and I'm going to keep my eye out as I'm starting to wrap up. But one of the things that a couple of the things I want you to hear here is that, one, this is the conversation we're going to be having in this new year. Is I believe strongly that this is a gap in relationship education, that this piece of devotion and having personal devotional codes that you come to live by and that you come to make as the anchor and the base for your decisions is anchored into so many other, like if you're seeing counselors, if you're seeing coaches, if you're trying different communication techniques, right? Depending on your definitions of good and bad, are going to greatly influence the success and the fulfillment you feel from applying those tools in your life, and whether or not you can get out of that cycle of feeling disappointment and in discontent, which you can totally do. And the easier it is and the more practiced you are at creating self-led definitions and becoming practiced at that, the easier this becomes. So I'm actually really excited in January to have specific offerings around this. Like, how do you create your own devotional codes? So keep your eye out, because I'm going to be sharing some ways that we can do this work together. Because I believe that when you are creating this for yourself, sometimes at first it's hard, because you're just so used to seeing things the way that you're used to seeing them, right? And you're like, well, maybe that is bad, right? It feels bad, but maybe it also is bad, right? Well, and like I did learn this at home, or I did learn this in my community, or I did learn this in my school, and I don't know, maybe it is what I have to do. But there's a difference between feeling like something is right and like you're going to follow it no matter what, and you've decided, versus having this feeling of, I learned that this thing is good, but something about this feels really off to me. And I need to explore this, right? Like, if that's the kind of person that you are, and that's the kind of feeling place you're in, where you're stuck and you know you have some views of what's good and bad, but you know you want a deeper way out of it, like, these are the kind of conversations that you're going to want to be having. And these are the kinds of offers that you're going to probably be so excited to see, so that you can actually have some structure borrow some inspiration, borrow some insights while you're on your own path to creating your own self-led definitions, right? So, yeah, so I want to leave you with that. And then another piece that I just want to share as we're closing is, so something that I'm feeling called to do less of in the new year, but I just want to offer a couple slots of it, probably like I think two slots I probably will make available as we're closing the year. So if there is a pull that you have to do any one-on-one work, which can be really, really powerful if you're like, hey, I want someone to drill down with me. Like I want some extra techniques. I want to learn some skill sets. I want to feel more grounded. I want to trust myself more, and I just want to dive one-on-one with someone into how I trust myself, how I see this all differently. If you're really, really wanting one-on-one support, then you can send me a direct message and you can just put the word coaching, and I can send you a link so we can have a discussion to see if connecting one-on-one would be a great fit for us. Because for the most part, I'm really feeling a pull to work on and offer group opportunities for us to dive into these devotional codes together so that you really create a self-led definition of what it means to be and do good that you love, right? That has you connected to a feeling of a home base where you feel super duper connected, right? Connected, loved, all of these amazing things, super trusting, and you feel this freedom when you have a desire, when you want something, to actually feel the freedom to listen to it. Because one thing I know for sure too is that in order for you to feel brave enough, courageous enough to try something new, right, you have to make it friendly and safe within you to do it. Right? If the environment within you feels like a battle, feels hard, feels impossible, right? You're not going to let yourself. Right? So you want to create a really safe and friendly place to allow for new desires, to allow for new explorations, to allow for showing up in new ways, in new, like unfamiliar ways, in old familiar places, right? And this is actually where a lot can be possible in close, intimate relationships, but where it can take some practice and some getting some support to make that easier and easier. So there's a couple spots open for that one-on-one coaching. If you're feeling a strong call before the end of the year and you want to sign up, so at the start of the year, you have a nice strong anchor of one-on-one support, I invite you to direct message me again, coaching. And for these devotional codes, know there is going to be more to come. I wanted to seed this. I wanted to introduce this today because we're going to have so much fun with this. And this is going to be a deep conversation where a lot of the offerings I'm going to have for you and with you this year are going to be around how to create your own devotional codes and how to feel like they are strong and steady. And you are so, so grateful to be living by them. And you get to see like how much just having your own really sturdy core set of devotional codes impacts your relationship in incredibly beautiful ways. And it does. It's actually really phenomenal. Maybe another day I'll share some stories about like just how much, even in my own personal life, this has made some incredible shifts. So if you'd like, as we're closing, feel free to put any of your takeaways. I'd love to know if there's one gem that you are taking from this conversation that you are so, so grateful for. And just as we're looking, oh, I see some of you that came on, Dennis, James, Michael, Scott, Mark. Thank you guys for being on. Bob, it's amazing to have you guys. Yeah, feel free to put any of your nuggets. I'm going to take a pause of the hot water and I'll see if we have any ahas, and then we will wrap up. All right. Amazing. So For those of you who, well, we are all ending this year. We all have a few more days left of 2023. So I am wishing you so, so much love. Um, oh, just thank you so much. Oh, you're infectious with your expression of right. Yay. Amazing. I'm glad this connects. Yeah, this is if you are someone who has struggled with guilt or shame or wanting to follow your heart in a way that's been different to what anybody around you has done, like whether it be that it was close family or maybe you had experience of this with close friends or a community you were in and you I've heard this happen for people where you maybe are a part of a family and you decide like you want to live in a different place than them and how difficult that can be in the journey that you can go through that for that. And again, like we talked about earlier with marriage, if you're wanting your marriage to be a specific way but you learned it should be this, like there can be moments of that that can feel very destabilizing. And without the proper support, they can not only feel destabilizing, but they can leave you in periods of feeling stuck for extended periods of time. And what I want you to hear is that you can get unstuck, right? And sometimes you just need additional support to help you get there. And this is one of my, gosh, this is one of my greatest areas of passion where I really want to support you to know that, and like reinforce, you can be trusted. You can shift out of that. You can create new definitions of what are good and right that still allow you to belong and feel like you are a beautiful person that is contributing amazing things to this world. And so, yeah, so I'm glad that that it's feeling good for you to hear and that you're enjoying that. Amazing. All right, so this is going up and it'll stay live on Facebook. So it's so wonderful. You can come back and watch the replay. And yeah, if you're watching the replay and if you have additional questions come up and you've gotten to this point, definitely feel free to share your thoughts, share your comments. I will come back to them. I'll read them, and they often inspire additional thoughts. And keep your eye out. We are going to be talking more about creating these devotional codes in the new year. So if this is lighting you up as much as it lights me up and you want support, you want to borrow inspiration, you want to borrow trust on your journey so that you can really anchor it in for yourself, stay with me this year. We're going to have some beautiful conversations and offerings to create some lasting shifts for you. All right, I'm going to end the recording. I'm sending you so much love, so much Happy New Year love to you all, and wishing you a really, really beautiful last few days of the year. And I'll be on the page. You'll see me, but just since I'm posting a video today, just sending you so, so much love for that if I don't see you before the new year. And we will keep this conversation going. Mwah.